Tom Cameron Fraser.
Brett Huntley. David Bishop. John Chancellor.
The president and a stream of fellow Americans paying their respects tonight to former President Ford. New fallout tonight over the final moments of Saddam Hussein and the grainy videotape that has so many angry Arabs spilling into the streets. And that awful day on the Danziger Bridge in the chaos after Katrina. Now police officers stand accused of murder. What really happened?
From NBC News World Headquarters in New York, this is NBC Nightly News with Darrent Williams.
Good evening and Happy New Year. And while the arrival of 2007 means new challenges for the U.S. in a violent world, tonight, in stark contrast to that, there is the most peaceful and reverential scene unfolding in the U.S. Capitol Rotunda, as thousands of Americans, from the lofty to the ordinary, file past the casket of our 38th president and pay their respects. Members of the U.S. military stand silent guard over the body of Gerald R. Ford, as the scene has become part of a surprising reaction in this country to his death and a new look at his role in our history. NBC's Kelly O'Donnell is with us tonight from the White House. Kelly, good evening.
Good evening, Brian. This evening ends the time for Americans, both ordinary citizens and the most well-known, to pay their respects. And it's estimated more than 30,000 did so. And what members of the Ford family did reminds us all that this passage of history is also personal. Few rituals in America's national life carry such quiet dignity. Hour after hour, thousands came. Many had waited in the rain to spend just moments filing past the flag-draped casket drenched in light.
We just want to pay our respects to the man and for the office of the presidency.
He was our president of the United States. And he was their father. Unlike any farewell to a president in modern memory, the Ford children made this national event feel neighborly as they stood to greet and thank those who came to honor their dad. Not simply dignitaries, but average folks who took time to be here.
People today, I don't think, stand up as much for what they believe in the right thing is, whereas I think President Ford did that.
Today was not a day for sweeping words, but silent tributes from those who followed Gerald Ford to the highest office, the President and First Lady, the Clintons, George and Barbara Bush. As they honored Ford's legacy, they also tried to comfort his widow. President and Mrs. Bush spent time with Betty Ford today. A public life remembered, too, by those who serve in government. Donald Rumsfeld had been Ford's Secretary of Defense, but today let decades of friendship show. In all the grandness of the rotunda, in all the public nature of this ceremony, there were also children who grieved for their grandfather, a family moved by a country's respect, and a former First Lady, a beloved American woman who, as she had done in her own public role before, allowed the nation to see her sorrow up close and to share in her burden. And advisors say President Bush invited the Ford family back inside the White House, and for some of the grandchildren, it was the first time they'd ever been here. Brian?
Thank you for that, Kelly. Kelly O'Donnell at the White House for us tonight. And by the way, we have a program note this evening. We'll be in Washington tomorrow for the funeral service of President Gerald R. Ford in the National Cathedral in Washington. NBC News live coverage of the funeral begins at 9 a.m. Eastern Time tomorrow. That's on this NBC station. The arrival of the new year means new challenges for American forces fighting on two fronts overseas. And in Iraq, the year brings with it a new milestone in U.S. casualties. The month of December was the bloodiest of all in 2006. 113 Americans were killed. And in Iraq, the U.S. death toll now stands at 3,002. That's according to the Associated Press. While much of the world's attention was centered on the hanging of Saddam Hussein 3 days ago, tonight the talk of much of the Arab world concerns how it was carried out. It turns out someone recorded the execution of a former dictator on grainy, poor-quality cellular phone video, apparently, and that is how this story is now spreading. NBC's Richard Engel is in Baghdad once again for us tonight. Richard, good evening.
Good evening, Brian. With that video in this information age, so many in this part of the world are now saying that Saddam Hussein had a public execution, and it's backfiring on the U.S. and Iraqi administration.
Saddam supporters marched in outrage today in Samarra and Baghdad. "We sacrifice our souls for you, Saddam," some cheered. There were more demonstrations in the West Bank and Jordan. Anger among Sunnis is growing as a video of Saddam's execution spreads on the internet and cell phones. On it, witnesses and guards insult Saddam. "Go to hell," they say. More provocatively, a guard calls out the name of Shiite militia leader Muqtada al-Sadr. The guard apparently wants Saddam to know his hanging is Shiite revenge. A judge is heard saying, "Please don't, the man is facing execution." But witnesses keep cheering.
The execution was a PR campaign disaster to the American administration and to the Iraqi government.
What happened? Although U.S. officials were pushing to delay the execution until after a Muslim holiday this week, Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki, a Shiite, rushed it through, in part to assert his authority.
It shows that he's credible. He's not just a puppet. He's an independent leader of a sovereign Iraq.
Stuck in the middle here are U.S. troops. The 3,000th was killed late last week. The toll would be much higher, if not for the work here at Baghdad's main combat support hospital. Medics today treated 2 Iraqi soldiers. A roadside bomb tore through their legs. The staff doesn't expect violence to let up in 2007.
I'd love to say that we're going to have a decreased amount of casualties, and I hope that's the case. But, you know, the reality is, tonight, there's going to be more wounded coming in. It's not going to end anytime soon.
More casualties, more lives to try to save.
And Brian, we found out just how sensitive the video of Saddam's execution has become. Earlier, we were at a restaurant filming with a Shiite who had bought the video for about 50 cents and was distributing it to his friends. A Shiite militia group found out we were there, surrounded us, and at gunpoint demanded that we hand over our tapes. Brian, it happened to us twice today.
All right, Richard Engel with the situation in Iraq tonight. Richard, thank you for that. And back to the death toll in Iraq. One of the first Americans to die in the war was Army Private First Class Howard Johnson, Jr. He was killed along with tens of his fellow soldiers when their convoy took a wrong turn on the march up to Baghdad just 4 days into the fight. The total death toll in that one engagement, 11 U.S. soldiers. Tonight, NBC's Kerry Sanders has a look at how the young private's family is doing nearly 4 years later here on the home front.
The war was new and popular when 21-year-old Howard Johnson died. People waving flags stood along the funeral route of Alabama's first fallen son. A lot has changed since then, but not for his family.
It just seems like yesterday. And I miss him so much.
Reverend Howard Johnson Sr. led his own son's funeral. Today, he still leans on his Baptist faith and the support of others to keep going. Like the woman who painted a portrait of his son, which he loves to tears.
Sometimes when I walk into a room, I see his picture on the wall, and it looks so real, it looks as if he is still alive, and I will cry.
I think I'm doing very well.
Gloria has her own way of coping.
It seems as though it gets a little better each day.
She daily wears her son's Purple Heart, knowing full well people will ask her why, and she must painfully tell them.
Even though the tears come, I appreciate them remembering him.
And he's remembered in other ways, like a playground that bears his name. The Johnsons are proud of their son and the nation he served, but say they never expected the war to go on so long or cost so many lives.
As the years roll by and more soldiers are killed, I wonder, is it really worth it?
3.5 years after his death, the family of PFC Johnson is doing better spiritually, but physically, there's a void in their lives, and always will be. Kerry Sanders, NBC News.
Our look at domestic news tonight begins in the Rocky Mountains. What one Colorado newspaper is calling a sea of white in the southeastern corner of the state. It is a snowy scene tonight for miles after Colorado's second big snowstorm of the season. A huge storm blamed for a dozen deaths now in a total of 4 different U.S. states. NBC's Leanne Gregg is with us tonight from southeastern Colorado. Leanne, good evening.
Good evening, Brian. The blizzard prompted emergency declarations in Colorado, Kansas, and New Mexico. And tonight, 5 nights after the storm began, it's still causing problems. In La Junta, Colorado, and across much of the eastern plains, they spent New Year's Day digging out.
I have not seen anything this bad in quite some time.
Greg Galena can't believe what he's seeing.
This is my car. This is a Ford Taurus. You wouldn't know that to look at the snow.
Volunteers helped try and save this building from the weight of the snow. Part of it already collapsed.
Nobody got hurt. Everything is rebuildable. I've got good insurance.
National Guard troops are helping those who are stranded or stuck.
One of the things they need is just transportation, food, and water. That's what we're here for.
It's the biggest snow I've seen since 1946 when I was a little bitty guy.
Troopers plan to deliver goods to ranchers where in many places their livestock has gone without food and water for 3 days. In a 4-county area, up to 300,000 cattle may be in jeopardy. A blizzard that started in the Rockies Thursday blew through the plains all the way to the Texas Panhandle, dumping as much as 4 feet of snow in some places.
What is rare is that we had 2 pretty powerful systems back to back within about a week's time. That certainly doesn't happen very often.
This storm brought record snow to New Mexico, caused thousands of traffic accidents, and tonight 60,000 homes and businesses in Kansas are still without power.
It was just a nightmare.
Back in La Junta, even though the snow has stopped, these towering drifts the blizzard left behind will be remembered for years to come. Tomorrow, crews on snowmobiles will attempt to deliver badly needed goods to livestock. Brian?
Hard to believe they've been hit so hard a second time. Leanne Gregg in Colorado for us tonight. Thanks. We'll take a break. Still ahead as Nightly News continues on this New Year's Day. 7 New Orleans police officers now just hours away from turning themselves in, and it all stems from an awful moment after Katrina. And later, why today brought good news for many Americans who own pets and want to be sure they'll be well taken care of.
You love whole grains, chicken, salmon, and leafy greens. Now, help your cat eat just as healthy. Introducing new Naturals from Purina Cat Chow with delicious ingredients cats love and no added artificial flavors or preservatives. You live well, you eat right. Help your cat do the same. New Naturals from Purina Cat Chow. Physical, emotional, complete. That's the Purina Cat Chow way of life.
That's me, Brett Favre. And it's my 9th day with Prilosec OTC. I thought I had to miss out on stuff because of frequent heartburn. But with Prilosec OTC, my thinking's changed. Day 2, I had the boys over for crawfish. Day 5, I just chilled. Today, I'm working at home. 0 heartburn for 24 hours with 1 pill a day with Prilosec OTC. It's day 9 for me. What day are you on?
Disciplined investing. It isn't about star fund managers. At Zero Price, it's about experienced investment teams that stay the course. For each 1, 5, and 10-year period, 70% of our mutual funds beat their Lipper average. Low-cost mutual funds from T. Rowe Price. Invest with confidence. Request a complete prospectus or profile with investment objectives, risks, fees, expenses, and other information to read and consider carefully before investing.
Just like your colds, your child's cold can come with plus aches and pains. So they can have coughs plus an achy body, a stuffy nose plus a throbbing head. But not every children's medicine treats all these symptoms. Children's Tylenol Plus Cold does. It combines effective cold medicines with the doctor-recommended pain relief of children's Tylenol to help you both feel better. Stop, think. Children's Tylenol Plus Cold.
We're back with NBC News In Depth tonight. The killings on the Danziger Bridge in New Orleans, which spans the industrial canal between Lake Pontchartrain and the Mississippi River, in the fog of suffering and brutality that followed Hurricane Katrina. Tomorrow morning, 7 New Orleans police officers facing charges of murder and attempted murder are expected to turn themselves in for allegedly shooting and killing 2 innocent civilians. Exactly what happened on the Danziger Bridge that Sunday morning has been in dispute, but one of the key pieces of evidence is video captured by an NBC News camera crew. Correspondent Martin Savage picks up the story tonight in depth.
In the days after Hurricane Katrina, New Orleans was underwater and facing a rising tide of lawlessness. Looting was common. So was violence. The police force was undermanned and overwhelmed. All of that confusion and chaos came to a head on Sunday, September 4th on the Danziger Bridge. What you're about to see is how police responding to an emergency call reacted with deadly and tragic consequences. It began around 9 in the morning when police rushed to the scene after reports of gunfire and 2 officers down under the Danziger Bridge. This video, taken by NBC News from the nearby interstate, shows the bridge and several people pushing a shopping cart. Then a truck pulling up, police jumping out, and gunfire. Lots of it.
After we were shot and lying there.
Susan Bartholomew, 4 family members, and a friend were on the bridge that day. She doesn't want to show her face for fear of police retaliation.
And I think it was mistaken identity.
Bartholomew says the first sign of trouble was when police shot them.
No warning?
No warning.
Someone identifying themselves as a police officer?
Not at all.
Police insist they did identify themselves and were fired upon, so they returned fire. Of the 6 people in Bartholomew's group, 5 were shot, a total of 18 times.
I had no idea where I was shot. It just felt like all over it, but it was obvious that my arm had been shot off because it was lying next to me on the ground.
A short distance away, family friend, 19-year-old James Brissett, lay dead. Farther up the bridge were 49-year-old Lance Madison, seen here on the right, and his developmentally disabled brother, Ronald.
We was 2 innocent citizens just trying to get evacuated from the storm and going about our business. And all of a sudden, like all hell broke loose.
Unaware those shooting were police, the 2 ran and became separated.
Left side, where are they?
Police gave chase.
Where are you? Give us a location. They're at the bottom of the bridge already. I see them running. Shut up!
And followed Ronald to the entrance of a nearby motel, where, according to a police statement, quote, the suspect reached into his waist and turned toward the officer, who fired 1 shot, fatally wounding him, unquote. But Ronald Madison had no gun, and 2 autopsies paint a much different picture, finding he wasn't shot once in the front, but 7 times in the back.
Sounds like small war.
Witnesses at the motel also refute the police account. In room 301, Lawrence Smith watched from a window. His wife had a better view from the door.
What she saw was a gentleman come around the corner with his hands above his head. And they shot him from behind.
Nearby, police ran down Lance Madison, Ronald's brother, and arrested him on 8 counts of attempted murder against police. They say a sheriff's deputy positively identified Lance as a shooter, but the witness was watching from a quarter mile away, and it was later revealed lied that he was in law enforcement. A grand jury cleared Lance of the charges.
And I don't think no one should have to go through what we've been through.
The chief of New Orleans Police calls the incident one of the saddest and darkest days in the city's history, but asked the public not to judge the officers too quickly.
Until the final verdict is given, I urge the community to let the judicial system run its course.
When contacted by NBC, attorneys for the accused officers said their clients' actions were justifiable. As for the report that brought police to the bridge in the first place, that now appears to have been a mistake. There were no cops in trouble. Just one more example of the chaos Katrina helped to create. Martin Savage, NBC News, New Orleans.
Back in a moment with some of the other news of this New Year's Day, including the sudden death of a prominent athlete.
Having a bladder control problem is bad enough. What makes it worse is the constant worry. The worry that your problem is as obvious as if you'd announced it to the world. But the good news is overactive bladder is a real medical condition. The symptoms can be treated. And the great news? There's one brand doctors prescribe more than any other, Detrol LA. With just one pill, Detrol LA works 24 hours, all day and all night, to help calm the bladder muscle that causes those frequent sudden urges. If you have certain stomach problems, glaucoma, or trouble getting urine to pass, you shouldn't take Detrol LA. The most common side effects are dry mouth, headache, constipation, and abdominal pain. All medicines have benefits and risks, and there may be other options, so ask your doctor if Detrol LA is right for you. When you find something that can help calm your bladder, imagine what that can do for you. I've heard so much about you. Detrol LA helps keep an overactive bladder quieter.
You already know how strong and effective Aleve is on arthritis and joint and back pain. Now there's even more good news about Aleve. Find out all the latest good news and all the good reasons to make Aleve your #1 pain reliever at AleveGoodNews.com.
What's your cereal's IQ? It's an odd question, but some cereals are brighter than others. When it comes to your heart, Smart Start is pretty intelligent. It's designed to help lower cholesterol. Smart, right? But what makes a heart health scholar? It has potassium and low sodium to help lower blood pressure, too. Pretty simple and very smart. And did I tell you how great it tastes? I didn't? How dumb of me.
Kellogg's Smart Start Healthy Heart. For your heart, start smart.
This has to be a dream. Oh, Mama.
Would you like to be a Publishers Clearinghouse winner tomorrow?
Oh, this is incredible.
You can if you go to PCH.com right now. Enter today, win tomorrow.
It finally happened.
Our next $10 million winner could be you.
When you've got the taste of the original ranch, things seem a little more like the way they're supposed to be. Hidden Valley Ranch, the way ranch is supposed to taste.
A member of the Denver Broncos was killed last night in a drive-by shooting just hours after the team was eliminated from the NFL playoff race. Darrent Williams died when the customized stretch white Humvee limousine he was riding in was sprayed with gunfire after a New Year's Eve party. Police say there'd been an argument at the Denver nightclub, but it didn't seem to involve Williams directly. Search teams are heading to one of Indonesia's largest islands, hoping to locate a passenger jet that disappeared in stormy weather. The Atom Air 737, with 102 people on board, was nearing its destination on Sulawesi Island when it vanished from radar screens. Officials have been able to call the co-pilot's cell phone, but they're getting no answer, indicating the plane may have crashed into the mountains and not into the sea. The Chief Justice of the United States, John Roberts, says the failure of Congress to raise federal judges' salaries has become, in his words, a constitutional crisis, as more judges leave the bench now for higher salary jobs. Federal judges are paid between $165,000 and $212,000 a year, and that is way less than they can earn in private practice or even by teaching law. When we come back here after a break, how the new year brings new laws.
Betsy, you've won the Publishers Clearinghouse. You've won.
No.
Yes?
Would you like to be a Publishers Clearinghouse winner tomorrow?
Oh, boy.
Now you can, because there's a new winner every day.
Never knew it come true.
You could even win the big one, $10 million.
That answered my prayer.
Go to PCH.com. Enter today, win tomorrow.
And I think you're wasting your time on the computer.
Or watch your mail.
I thought it was a gimmick, but it ain't.
Enter today, and our next $10 million winner could be you.
Millions of people watch me cook, but I watch what I eat. Still, when my doctor checked my cholesterol, it was slightly higher than we'd like. We talked about statins, a good option. For me, he chose Zetia. It works differently. Statins work mainly with the liver. Zetia works in the digestive tract like some other medicines. But Zetia is unique in the way it helps block the absorption of cholesterol that comes from food. Zetia, along with a healthy diet, lowered bad cholesterol by an average of 30 points. That's 18%. It complements what I'm already doing.
Zetia may not be right for people who have ever had liver problems, are nursing or pregnant, or may become pregnant. Your doctor will decide if Zetia is right for you. Unexplained muscle pain or weakness could be a sign of a rare but serious side effect and should be reported to a doctor right away. Common side effects included tiredness and stomach pain.
3, 2.
Cooking healthy. Ask your doctor if Zetia is right for you. Zetia, a different way to help fight cholesterol.
Did you know 1 in 3 men will face prostate issues?
Really? I didn't know that.
That's why One-A-Day Men's is a complete multivitamin with more lycopene, which Harvard studies suggest may help prostate health. One-A-Day Men's. More of what matters.
Your nasal passages, when they're clear, life's a breeze. But when congestion blocks them, it's anything but. Unlike pills, Afrin's Gentle Mist reopens your nasal passages instantly so you can breathe better all day long. Afrin. Amazing.
You love whole grains, chicken, salmon, and leafy greens. Now, help your cat eat just as healthy. Introducing new Naturals from Purina Cat Chow with delicious ingredients cats love and no added artificial flavors or preservatives. You live well, you eat right. Help your cat do the same. New Naturals from Purina Cat Chow. Physical, emotional, complete. That's the Purina Cat Chow way of life.
NBC News.
It was a clean sweep for the Democrats. We are in Haifa. The air raid sirens have just sounded.
We were there for you in 2006.
North Korea has defied the will of the international community.
Death by hanging.
And we'll be there in 2007. NBC News, America's news leader.
When the ball dropped in Times Square here in New York last night, it meant more than just the arrival of the new year. Around the country, quietly, in some cases without notice, a host of new laws went into effect. And around here, it just wouldn't be the first day of the new year without our justice correspondent, Pete Williams, and the new rules that we must now live by.
Starting this month, American citizens flying back from Canada, Mexico, or anywhere else in the Western Hemisphere will need a passport, a requirement intended to cut down on the use of phony documents.
It's much more difficult to fraudulently create a passport as opposed to a driver's license birth certificate.
In 15 states, new laws raise the minimum wage to help workers keep up with rising costs. The federal minimum wage remains the same, but with Democrats now in charge of Congress, that's very likely to rise too.
A majority of states now have higher minimum wages than the current federal minimum wage, which is at its lowest point since 1955.
Beginning today, save those receipts. The IRS will no longer allow deductions for cash contributions to charity without a paper trail. A new law in South Carolina requires all public schools to document incidents of bullying and say how they'll punish offenders.
If a child is terrified because someone is picking on him every time he goes to school, that's certainly not a good learning environment.
New York, a state heavy with cell phones, today begins requiring dealers to take back old phones for recycling. In Indiana, a new law is aimed at another nuisance, unsolicited ads delivered by fax. Starting today, senders could be fined up to $1,500. Restaurant diners in Illinois who don't finish their wine can invoke the new wine doggy bag law and take the bottle home. And Ohio joins the nearly 36 states that let residents set up trust funds for the care of their cats and dogs after the owners are gone. Pete Williams, NBC News, Washington.
And that is our broadcast for the first day of the new year. Thank you for being with us. I'm Brian Williams. We'll be with you from Washington tomorrow morning. A reminder, then we'll look for you right back here tomorrow evening. Happy New Year. Good night.
The new Congress goes to work, and MSNBC, with the best political team in the business, is all over it. Non-stop coverage all day Thursday on MSNBC.